Dr. Wood, author of the book Miracles Minutes, and tonight's a little personal share about me and my life, and someone who I hold in high regard is my father. So I'm going to go over a little bit about a story about his life. Here is a man who grew up extremely poor, dirt poor. He had to buy his own clothes. His mother and father got married very young. She's now passed away. She blamed him for all the problems in her life. So here's this grown woman who put all of her difficulties on a young kid. And there's three boys in the family. And my dad's parents got divorced and separated when they were younger. And he had to build his own house from scratch. He was a hustler. He went out and raised his own chickens and stuff like that. So the family could eat and do different things. And he basically had to raise his brothers. He went off to. He actually had a chance to play football at University of Alabama. And he went to Vietnam instead. I mean, not Vietnam, but Korea instead to marry my mother. Um, my he basically him and his brothers. He had no family, none. He came home from North Korea, and his mother had sold all of his clothes away. His first car didn't even have a floorboard. He worked his way up from nothing in a factory and became plant manager and then became general manager of a corporation. He raised us. There was four of us in my family. I have three siblings. My mother is an incredible woman. Um, she is probably the most uh, empathic person I've ever met in my life. And I tell this uh, not to be crude, but just to demonstrate the forgiveness that this woman has. Where I tell people I probably could hit my mother in the head with a shovel. She'd be bleeding, and she said, "I'd forgive you. I love you." I'd be like, "What are you talking about? Like I just beat you up?" But this woman is an incredible woman. I have two great parents that I'm very very thankful for. That I feel very blessed and privileged that I had got to have people like them in my life. My mother's story is a little bit different, where both my grandparents are deceased. Great people. I love my grandfather dearly. My mom's father, incredible man, very caring man, very compassionate man. My grandmother was also very caring, just in a little bit different way. But as my mom grew up, she grew up in a household where I used to go visit my grandparents. So I lived in Tennessee. My grandparents lived up in Northeast, up in Pennsylvania, and also New Jersey. And my grandmother was on my grandfather's butt all day long. He'd go to the grocery store. He couldn't do anything right, and he just pretty much live outside, pick flowers and stuff like that, turn off his hearing aid and all that stuff. But so my mother's pretense was that when she got married, she saw the fighting that went on, and she was going to grow up in a home full of peace. So I grew up in a very loving, caring, both my mother and father environment, and my mother never really followed my father. I never saw that in my whole life. Like my dad would come home, they both always cooperated. My dad was about team since he had no family. He always taught us to care about each other, to stick together. Like I don't call my siblings every day. I mean, sometimes I ain't talk for a year. But I can tell you what. I mean, we could be in an argument. Like we fight, but we could be in an argument. If I ever needed something, boom, my brothers or sisters would be there in a minute. I mean, in a heartbeat. We're also very honest with each other. So, like, if we are married or have a spouse or have a relationship, and we tell them the story, they don't just pit. They don't go with us just because we're flesh and blood. If my brother says, "Hey, you know what? Being an asshole," then I would take that into consideration. We were taught how to deal with conflict. Uh, my father always held us accountable for our stuff. I'll tell a real short, quick story where I had a party at my house when I was, I guess, in my 20s. We were drinking, and I had friends over. They left my house, and one of my friends had actually driven through my neighbor's yard, being a smartass. So at 7 a.m. in the morning, my father is up there kicking my bed, telling me to get my god dang ass out of bed right now. And I was like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "One of your dumbass friends rode through your neighbor's yard and tore it all up." He said, "You can go over there and knock on the god dang door right now and go there and fix his yard." I'm like, "But Dad, I didn't do it." He's like, "I don't give a shit. It was your party. You're responsible. One of your friends was irresponsible. You go over and fix his yard." So I walk across the street, knock on his door, and I said, "Mr. So and so, sorry, I want to apologize. I had a party at my house last night, and with my friends, drove through your yard, and I'm over here to fix it." And our neighbor, he's a very, very kind man. He's like, "Oh, don't worry about it." So I come walk across the street, all smiles. I walk in the house. My dad's like, "What are you doing home?" I'm like, "Well, Mr. So and so said I didn't have to worry about fixing his yard." He said it was okay. He goes, "I don't give a shit what he said." He said, "You can go there and fix his goddamn yard right now." And I went over there and got my shovel and tamped down all the ruts that were in his yard and used as much fill dirt as I could to make him whole. But what I learned from my father was, if you screw over your neighbor, it's my responsibility to come and deal with the problem, address it, deal with whatever the repercussions are. And I learned how to be a responsible person in life. And what I learned how to do was deal with conflict. I learned how to be in high tension situations. I learned how to, be there in the problem. And if you learn how to be in problems, what happens is the problem eventually unravels and it gets solved. People avoid conflict, who avoid confrontation, who avoid problems. You have someone drive through your neighbor's yard, tear it up, and you don't come over and make them whole. They don't want to be your neighbor anymore. So I want to thank my father for teaching me about respect for myself and other people and about being caring, and my mother for being empathic and all the things that they did for me. So thanks a lot.